Yeah, good. Okay, so we've been discussing about the initial direct cost, right? Now let me show how it works. Let's take a kind of simple example. Let's say that there's a particular asset. Uh, so you enter into the lease agreement. You enter into the lease agreement, and let's say the fair value of that particular lease asset is 300,000, right? In year zero. When it comes to the lease payment, let's say that as per the agreement, you need to pay for the next 3 years 120 each. 120 each. So let's keep it simple. No guaranteed residual value, no unguaranteed residual value, nothing as such. Everything is just the fixed payment what you may pay. So you can see that it's 120 each, and the fair value of that particular asset today is 300,000. And here the implicit interest rate is not given. Implicit interest rate is not given. Interest rate is not given. But depending on the information, you can simply work that out. You can work out that. How is that? So this is to bring your A-level knowledge on IRR. The implicit interest rate is nothing but IRR, right? So what is the IRR? That is the rate at which the future payments would be equal to the initial cash outflow. The future receipts, once you get them discount at a particular rate, what is the rate that which makes these future payments equal to the fair value of this asset? That is what we call the IRR. ඒකට අපි IRR කියන්නේ මොකක්ද? ප්‍රොජෙක්ට් එකකට දාලා පුතාලා කතා කරන්නේ නැති ඒ ප්‍රොජෙක්ට් එකෙන් හම්බෙන ඇත්තම රිටර්න් එක. ඒකට ඒකෙදි මොකක්ද එසෙන්ස් එක? future cash flows ටික discount කරලා once you establish the present value, that particular value should be equal to the initial cash outflow, right? That is what the IRR. So implicit interest rate is exactly the same. So under a lease, what you do, you may pay the future cash flows. So once you get them discounted, and the value what you get, it should, if it is equal to the fair value of this asset, and that is the IRR. So therefore here I can work out the IRR. So let me work this out, the IRR. So you can simply select the values. That's it. See, the IRR is 9.70. So the rate in this particular agreement is 9.7. 9.7, right? That's it. Then when it comes to this implicit interest rate in the books of lessee, when you are working the things out, there you would have witnessed that this was the rate at which you compute the interest expenses. The rate at which you compute the interest expenses. So the implicit interest rate එක කියන්නේ මොකක්ද? books of lessee ගේ ඒ rate එක තමයි ඇත්තටම expense එකක් විදිහට charge කරපු rate එකනේ. expenses charge කරපු rate එක. Then similarly, if you apply the same thinking in the books of lessor, implicit interest rate එක කියන්නේ මොකක්ද? What is that implicit interest rate? ඒක තමයි ඇත්තටම lessor ට හම්බෙන ආදායම. Initially lease receivable අඳුර ගන්නවා, ඊට පස්සේ periodically interest income එකක් තියෙනවා. lessee ට තියෙන interest expense, the lessor is having interest income. එතකොට මේ විදිහට නම් arrangement එක යන්නේ අපිට පේනවා interest income එක annually කීයද? 9.7. 9.7. So if the things are such, your interest income is 9.7. Now let's say that in this particular agreement there's a initial direct cost. What is that initial direct cost? Say that is 310,000. Sorry, 10,000. Let's say that it's 10,000 initial direct cost. When it comes to the legal fees, documentation charge, say it's 310. So now what I'm going to do, this initial amount is going to get 310. If this initial amount is 310, see what has happened to the implicit interest rate. In the absence of initial direct cost, it was just 300, and your implicit interest rate was 9.7. But if you add this interest cost over here, then the value of the asset would become 310. And if that becomes 310, if your future cash flows are not going to get changed, then you can see that your implicit interest rate is now getting reduced to 9.87. Hence, what has happened? You can see that when it comes to the future income, your future income is 7.87. Your future income is no longer 9.7. Then අපිට effectively හම්බෙන interest එක 9.7 නෙමෙයි 7.87. ඒ නිසා තමයි මෙතන කියන්නේ if you have initial direct cost, what it can happen is that the initial direct cost should be a part of including the initial measurement of the net investment in the lease, and it will reduce the amount of income recognized over the lease term. So now it is clear that how this income is going to get reduced. It's by way of decreasing the kind of interest income. So earlier you have earned, in the absence of initial direct cost, it was like 9.8 or something, that 9.7 that you were earning. But in the presence of the initial direct cost, it has changed your interest income, what you would get in the future. So it is like 7.87, 7.87, right? So that's what it means by the kind of initial direct cost, right? Okay. So these aspects may not be tested at your level, but just to give you a kind of sense, right? එතකොට මේ වගේ දේවල් අපි ඇත්තටම ටෙස්ට් කරන්න නැති වෙයි. ටෙස්ට් කරන්නේ නැහැ. ඒකට මේක පොඩ්ඩක් අයිඩියා එකක් දෙන්න, right? ඒකට මේක මම කොහොමද මෙහෙම 310ට සමාන කරලා ගත්තේ? මට මෙතන රේට් එක හොයාගන්නයි ඕනේ. එතකොට අනාගතයේ cash flows තියෙන 120 ගානේ. ඒතකොට 120 ගානේ 3ක්. ඒක වෙනස් වුණේ නැහැනේ, right? එතකොට 120 ගානේ 3ක් ගියාම ඒක දැන් අපි ඩිස්කවුන්ට් කරොත් 7.87 වලින් 787. එතකොට ඒක ඒ විදිහට තමයි 1 divided by 1 plus 0. So is that right? Okay. So that is the new discount rate. What we are getting now, it's 1 divided by 1.0787 to the power 2, and 1 divided by 1.0787 to the power 3. So once you get the present value, and that is what become equal to 310. තමයි සමාන වෙන්නේ what we call 310 වලටනේ. ඒතර මේකේ අඩුවීම අපි observe කරන්නේ මේ විදිහට. දැන් පේනවා almost 310. ඒතර 7.87න් දැන්ට මේ තියෙන future cash flows ටික discount කරොත් දැන් අපිට ඉන්නේ 310. හැබැයි අපි ඒක අමතක කරලා අපි හිතුවත් අවස්ථාවක් initial direct cost නැති අවස්ථාවක්. එතකොට අපි ගණනය කරපු විදිහට rate එක ඉන්නේ 9.7. එහෙනම් 1 divided by 1.097 to the power, sorry, not 1 divided by 1.097 to the power 2, 1 divided by 1.097 to the power 3. ඒකට දැන් ගත්තොත් ඩිස්කවුන්ට් කරලා එන වටිනාකම 300 වෙන්න ඕනේ. ඒකට ඒක තමයි මට පෙන්වන්න අවශ්‍ය උනේ. In the presence of initial direct cost, your interest rate is going to get reduced, right? This is a new rate. So that's why it says that it will reduce your future income. So otherwise it might not make sense what it is. I just want to make it clear. I do not know whether you are getting that. Even if you're not getting that, you need not to worry too much. These are not tested for sure in the exam purposes. That is just for the knowledge, right? Okay. Now let's move to what comprises the lease payment. So we agree that when it comes to the kind of gross investment, it's a matter of lease payment and the unguaranteed residual value. Now let's see what comprises the lease payment. In fact, I have explained that, but just to take you through, I would say that that is exactly similar to the uh, what you call the lease payment that you get in the case of books of lessee. But there was one difference. It was about the guaranteed residual value. So there, earlier you get the amounts payable under the residual value guarantee, but here you are getting the entire residual value guarantee. The fixed payment less any lease incentive payable, earlier the same was there. Variable lease payment, that was there. Exercise price of the purchase option was there. Payment of penalties for terminating the lease, that was again, it was there. But here, this is the most important thing for the change. Any residual value guarantee provided to the lessor by the lessee, right? So you may simply make that difference. Earlier, this was taken like amounts payable under the residual value guarantee. But here, it is residual value guarantee provided to the lessor by the lessee, right? Okay. Party related to the lessee or a third party unrelated to the lessor that is finally capable of discharging the obligation under the guarantee. So that's how it works, right? Okay, but from the exam point of view, in your case, out of these many things, what you can be tested, it's about the fixed payment and guaranteed residual value from the lease payment and also the unguaranteed residual value. පුතාලා exam point of view එකෙන් මේක බැලුවොත් විභාගෙදී තාලෙන් ටෙස්ට් කරන්න පුළුවන් fixed payment එකක් දේවි ඒත් එක්කම guaranteed residual value එකක් දේවි සහ unguaranteed residual value එකක් දේවි. එතකොට මේ purchase options, termination options, variable payments අපෙන් ටෙස්ට් කරන්නේ නැති වෙයි මේ level එකේ, right? So just to give you a kind of idea, we are having that. Okay, having said that, so let's go and work out one comprehensive example. If you can manage something of this nature, that's it. That's all what is expected. So මේ වගේ දෙයක් පුතාලට manage කරගන්න පුළුවන් නම් that is the expectation. Here it says that the Helen PLC leased a vehicle from Lanka Finance PLC. You are provided the following information. Commencement date 1st of April. Lease term 4 years. Annual lease payment 80,000 paid on 31st March. Guaranteed residual value is given. Unguaranteed residual value is given. Interest rate is also given. Required ledger accounts in the books of Lanka PLC. Okay, let's provide this and also the extracts of the financial statements. So we may do that. And to make your life easy, the present value of annuity factor is given. The annuity in the sense, it is the kind of fixed payment for a fixed period of time. You can see that when it comes to this lease payment, that is 80,000, that is for a period of 4 years. So 80,000 at the end of each period. So instead of taking these payments separately and getting them discounted, you may go for a kind of easy approach that is about using the annuity factor. So once you apply the annuity factor, if you multiply it by 80,000, there it gives you the present value of all these payment 80,000 at the end of each year. And also when it comes to the guaranteed residual value and the unguaranteed residual value, these are one-time payment, a one-time receipt. So therefore those has to be treated as the present value at the end of year 4. So that present value factor is given. It's 0.636, right? Okay, that's it. Now you may go and work the things out. So let me copy this information. Since we are running out of time, I would like to suggest that we may work this out together. Then probably in the next class or in your tutorial, you would be working out some questions, right? අපි පුතාලා අපි ටයිම් එක යන නිසා අපි මේක එකට work out කරමු. ඊට පස්සේ පුතාලා පුළුවන් ටියුටෝරියල් වලදී questions work out කරන්න. Right? Okay, so let's do that step by step. Then I believe it will provide you kind of good understanding on this, right? Okay, here the most important account that you need to maintain, as you agree that it is about the lease receivable, right? So if you lease a particular asset from a finance company, or it's a kind of, say, it's a kind of bank or something, so this would be the procedure. Let's say that it's like this. Here we have the Helen PLC. Let me take HPLC. You can see HPLC is the lessee or the customer. HPLC is the lessee. So the HPLC needs a particular kind of machine or something, a vehicle. HPLC needs a vehicle. Say that the seller may be X Limited or something, XPLC or something that we do not know. So this would be the seller, right? This is what we call the seller. This is how it goes now. So there is a particular vehicle that you want from a particular person, particular seller, but the point is you do not have adequate money. So make a leasing එකක් කියන්නේ අපි ඉන්නවා customer ඕනේ කාගෙන් හරි asset එකක් ගන්න. හැබැයි customer එහෙම නැත්නම් lessee අවශ්‍ය තරම් මුදලක් නැහැ. ඒ වගේ අවස්ථාවක තමයි they are going for an intermediate party. This case it is Lanka Finance. So therefore what the HPLC would do, they will approach the Lanka Finance, and they will approach the Lanka Finance and they will explain their requirement. Look, we want to purchase a machine from XPLC, but we do not have enough money with us. But we find that under a lease agreement, so it would be convenient for us to make a kind of installment and settle that with you. So can you provide me a lease facility? So that's what the offer the HPLC would give to the Lanka Finance. If the Lanka Finance PLC agrees, what they would do? They would pay XPLC. They may pay cash. Whatever the price, they may pay for the XPLC. And they would get the asset and they will give that particular asset to the H. So asset is given back to the HPLC. This is how it works. Now in this scenario, you need to do the accounting in the books of Lanka Finance PLC, right? In the books of Lanka Finance PLC, and this is what we call the lessor, right? You need to do the accounting in the books of lessor. This is what the books of lessor, right? Okay, it's what the scenario. එතකොට මෙතන මොකක්ද basically සිද්ධ වෙන්නේ? HPLC එකට සල්ලි නැහැ, කෙලින්ම XPLC එකට ගිහිල්ලා වත්කම ගන්න. ඒ නිසා කියනවා ලංකා PLC ට කතා කරලා ෆයිනෑන්ස් එකක් ලෑස්ති කරගන්න. ලීස් එකක් arrange කරගන්න. එතකොට ලංකා ෆයිනෑන්ස් XPLC ට ගෙවලා වත්කම ගන්නවා. ඒ වත්කම HPLC ට දෙනවා. HPLC installments විදිහට ලංකා ෆයිනෑන්ස් කම්පැනි එකට pay කරගෙන යනවා. So it is about the entire lease arrangement. Now we are going to account that in the books of lessor. So as per this agreement, so the lease receivable is the kind of asset that the lessor need to identify, or the Lanka PLC, Lanka Finance. The Lanka Finance in their books, they need to identify that. And what about the lease receivable? It says that you need to recognize them at the net receivables. That's what the standard says. You need to recognize initially this lease receivable at its net investment, not net receivable, sorry, net investment. That's what it says. Net investment. Then what do you mean by this net investment? It is the gross investment discounted at the implicit rate. Then what do you mean by the gross investment? It is the lease payment plus the unguaranteed residual value. Now let's look at the lease payment When it comes to the lease payment, it goes like 80,000 for a period of 1 to 4. 1 to 4, right? So in that, to make your life easy, the annuity factor is given. So how much is the annuity factor? It says that annuity factor is 3.3, yeah, 3.037 or something. If this factor is not being given, what you had to do? What is your way out? You are simply taking this 80,000 from year 1 to 4 like this, discount කරන්න වෙනවානේ. මේ fact එක දීලා තිබ්බේ නැත්නම් අපිට සෑම වෙලාවකම මේක මේ විදිහට discount කරන්න වෙනවා. ඔන්න පළවෙනි එකේ discount කරා. in the second year discount කරා. third year එකේ discount කරා. fourth year එකෙත් discount කරා. So මේ විදිහට තනි තනියෙන් කරලා තමයි ගන්න වෙන්නේ නේ. So that is the traditional approach. So මේ විදිහට කරද්දී කියොත් අපිට පේනවා it takes significant time commitment. So අපිට පේනවා මෙතන value එකක් ගන්නවා. That particular value is like this. Sorry, this is the value, right? So it comes as 242,988 or something. But if you go for this particular method, you can at a stretch take that. See, so there's a kind of difference of 28 rupees. That is due to the rounding errors. You can forget about that. It's almost similar. So මෙතන එන අගයන් දෙක අපිට පේනවා exactly the similar. So අපිට මේක එකපාරම ගන්න පුළුවන් මේ විදිහට යන්නේ නැතුව. So ඔයාලට හිතනවාද ඇයි එහෙම එකපාරටම කොහොමද එහෙම වැලියු එකක් එන්නේ? ඒක බොහොම සරල කාරණාවක්. දැන් අපි මෙතන කරන්නේ 80000 වැඩි කරනවා මේ කියන රේට් එකේ. ඒකට එකතු කරනවා 80000 වැඩි කරලා 0.79. ඒතර මේකේ පොදු අගය තමයි 80000. ඒතර මේ ටිකේ අපි එකතුව ගත්තොත් ඒක සමාන වෙයි අර කියන 3.37. මේක තමයි underlying accounting නේ 3.037. එහෙනම් ඒක තමයි මේ සිද්ධ කරලා තියෙන්නේ. Now it should make sense what is the annuity factor and what is the discounting factor. And what is the relationship between the discounting factor and the annuity factor? This is it, right? Okay. So that is something to do with finance. But here in a question, if you are given the annuity factor, you can simply go and multiply that and get the required value. So that is the bottom line, right? Okay. I just wanted to show you how it works. So now you see it coincide. So you're fine. Okay, you take that 80,000 from 4 yes. Comes a different format. Sorry for that. What's that? 1 to 4. Then you can go for the guaranteed residual value. So the guaranteed residual value is there. You cannot. It's a kind of simply a discounting rate where you need to apply 12%. It's going to be 0.636. So you may get that. It's like this. Now you can see there is a value of the lease payment. It's the value of the lease payment, right? Okay. But you know, when it comes to the net investment, it's not all about the lease payment. Not all about the lease payment, but also there must be an unguaranteed residual value. Unguaranteed residual value. What is unguaranteed residual value? The question gives that it is 10,000. That should also be considered discounting at the end of the lease term 0.636. So once you get that, the unguaranteed residual value එකේ වටිනාකමත් අපි කියනවා 6360. So once you take the total, simply take the total lease payment present value, unguaranteed residual value present value. So it is supposed to be recognized at 262,040. That is the value of the lease. 262,040. That is the amount. So here how it works, that is their lease receivable, and that particular amount they would pay for this kind of XPLC. So they need to pay that because this is exactly similar to the fair value of the asset. So therefore, the Lanka Finance would pay this 262,040 to the kind of XPLC, and they are getting their asset. So accordingly, cash gets credit and it gets debit. So therefore, the debit entry is this. So make a double entry එක යන්නේ කොහොමද? මේ විදියට net investment එක ගත්තාම අපි දන්නවා ඒක equal වෙනවා fair value of the asset. asset එකේ fair value එකට equal වෙනවා. ඒතකොට ඒ වගේ අවස්ථාවක අපි දන්නවා කොහොමද lease arrangement එක යන්නේ. ලංකා finance extra ගෙවන්න ඕනේ. එහෙනම් cash credit වෙනවා ලංකා finance company එකේ debit entry කොහෙටද යන්නේ? lease receivable කියලා. It's about the measurement at initial recognition. එහෙනම් මුලින්ම අඳුනගන්නේ ඔන්න ඔය කියන විදිහට. net investment එකට අඳුරගත්තා. Right, that's not all. The question even asks you to provide with what do you call even to recognize the extract as at 31st March 2020. then මේක 31යි මාර්තු 2020 වෙන්න ඕනේ. එහෙමනම් එතන තියෙනවා අවුරුද්දක පීරියඩ් එකක්. එහෙනම් subsequent measurements වලටත් යන්න ඕනේ. Subsequent measurements මොනවද? It's quite simple that you need to recognize your interest income. The Lanka Finance need to recognize interest income. And how do they do? When come to the interest income, it is amortized cost. Amount outstanding at the beginning of the period multiplied by what? The interest rate, 0.12. You may get that. Okay, it's interest income. Now, at the end of the lease term, you can see that the annual lease payment you will be receiving from the Helen PLC. So it's paid on 31st March. So therefore, at the end of the first year, you receive cash. How much? 80,000. That's it. Hence, you're getting the balance carried forward at here. I take the summation that is exactly similar to the way you treat the lease liability. Where you treat the lease liability, that is exactly similar. But the most important thing is recognizing the lease receivable initially. That's it. So this would be the value at the end of the period, 213,485. Now you are supposed to provide the extracts. Let's provide extracts from statement of profit or loss. Profit or loss. So in the statement of profit or loss for the year ended, 31st March 2020, you can see that there's interest income under the other income, or I would say that that is their main income. Being a finance company, it's all about their top line. So interest income is their revenue, I would say, interest revenue. The finance company එකට තියෙන ප්‍රධානම ආදායම් මාර්ගය interest එක. එහෙනම් මේක revenue එක විදියට තමයි යන්නේ. එහෙනම් interest revenue එක කීයද? 31,444.8 or something. අපිට පේනවා 31,448.7 8ක් තමයි interest income එක. 31,448.7 Then if you take the extracts from statement of profit or loss, the statement of financial question, it's extracts from statement of financial position. As at 31st March 2020. So if you have to provide the extracts from statement of financial question, what you have to identify? So in fact, there you need to identify the non-current asset and current assets. because this is something comes from the LKS1. As per the LKS1, whatever the things that get realized within next 12 months should be your current asset. What goes beyond that must be non-current asset. So therefore, you need to recognize the lease receivables over there and even under the current assets. Lease receivables, it is current portion, I would say, it's current portion, and it's lease receivables, non-current portion. Current portion and non-current portion, right? Yeah, that's how it goes. Then how we have to classify? What is the most easiest way? So in fact, you have two options. The easiest option is continue this for the one more year. If you continue this lease asset, lease receivable for one more year, you can easily get them distinguished. So again, even for 2021, you need to work out the interest income. That's going to be like 1, 2. Again, the cash you would receive. So it's 8,000. And the balance carried forward, you're getting. Take the summation. 139,102.98. The balance carried forward comes as this much. So it is 159,102 at the end of the second year. So if you have the lease receivable at the end of the second year is this much, and that is the non-current portion. Non-current portion. 159, 102.8 or something. 98. 98, right? දෙවැනි අවුරුද්ද අවසානයේ තියෙන එක මොකක්ද? ඒක තමයි ඇත්තටම non current portion එක වෙන්නේ. දෙවැනි අවුරුද්ද අවසානයේ අපි ඉන්නේ පළවෙනි අවුරුද්ද අග, දෙවැනි අවුරුද්ද අවසානයේ තියෙන lease receivable කියන්නේ ඒක තමයි non current portion. එහෙනම් current portion එක හොයාගන්න එක බොහොම පහසුයි. පළවෙනි අවුරුද්ද අග lease receivable this much 213,484.80. At the end of the first year this much, and thereby the current portion is 54,381, right? How I get that? It's 484.8 minus 159, 102.98. That's how we get. So this is how we get the kind of lease receivable. එහෙනම් අපි මේ විදිහට තමයි lease receivables පෙන්වන්න ඕන. මේක තමයි අපේ extract එක. Yes, you may be having questions. ප්‍රශ්න තියෙන්න පුළුවන් පුතාලට. නම් ප්‍රශ්න අහන්න අපි ඒවා පැහැදිලි කරගමු. You would be having questions. Yes, would like to answer that. Is that clear, or anything that I want to explain further? මේ කිව්වේව පැහැදිලිද? තවදුරටත් පැහැදිලි කළ යුතු යමක් තියෙනවද? ඒත් සරල කාරණාවක් තමයි තිබ්බේ. අපිට මුලින්ම අවශ්‍ය වුණේ lease receivable එක recognize කරන්න net investment එකට. Net investment කරන්නේ මොකක්ද? Present value of the lease payment and present value of the guaranteed residual value. So මේ දෙක තමයි අපි මුලින්ම කරේ. You go for the lease payment first and get the present value, and you go for the unguaranteed residual value, get the present value. Simply add them, and that is your lease receipt. Interest income was taken based on the implicit interest rate. The cash, the installment was received, thereby the interest, thereby the lease receivable at the end of the period was identified. Having identified, you were required to classify them as current and non-current, and that's what you did. That's what you did. The interest income for the first year was recognized, that is your, in fact, revenue. Being a finance company, the interest is your revenue. And that particular revenue was identified. That's what we did. Would like to hear you. Are you all fine with that? Or do I want to explain further? So in fact, this is what we did, the subsequent measurement. So I would only look at that particular slide and finish the things off. Uh, a lessor to recognize finance income over the lease term based on the pattern reflecting a constant periodic return of rate of return on the lessor's uh, net investment in the lease. So, it talks about subsequent measurement. Subsequently, what you have to do, you need to recognize the interest income. And that particular interest income must be in a pattern reflecting the constant periodic return. So that's what we in fact did. The lease payment relating to the period apply against the gross investment in the lease to reduce both the principal and the unearned financing. So we have taken the lease payment to the lease receivables account, and thereby the balance carried forward of the lease receivable was taken at the end of the period. And that's it. So we have discussed operating lease. I believe that, so we may discuss that in the next class since we have discussed most of the content, right? Okay, then that is all what is expected for the day. If you have anything to get clarified, yes, now it's time. Hope you all are doing good. Or are you kind of totally confused? So would like to have a kind of interaction. This is something that we were compelled to go for. So I know that you do not like this online platform the most, but what to do? We have to bear it up. So we need to go with that. නේ? Online platform එක එච්චර convenient platform එකක් නෙමෙයි. නමුත් what to do? So we need to bear the things up. Fine. So if you all are fine, so for the day, let's stop the discussion and see you in the next class. Thank you. What is that? It's not allowed.